everybody. This is Dr. Jessica Freedman from MedEdits Medical Admissions. Our students this year have gotten into some amazing medical schools, including UCLA, UCSF, NYU, Mount Sinai, WashU, UVA, and those are just a few off of the top of my head that I can think of. And one of the reasons that our students have been so successful is because they choose their schools to which they will apply very, very wisely. And you can do this on your own if you use the right resources. And one of the best resources that you can use to choose your schools and to decide where you should apply is the MSAR, or the Medical School Admission Requirements website, and that is through the AAMC. And if you have trouble getting to the MSAR, you should focus on this this address that I am highlighting here. You will have to register for an AAMC account in order to register for the MSAR. But today, and you can see I am already logged in, I'm just going to go through some key features that the MSAR has so you can understand how to navigate it, because I realize that when you are initially navigating the MSAR, it's kind of complicated. And there is a tremendous amount of incredible data in the MSAR, and it is the most up-to-date and the most reliable data that exists out there, okay? So let me first just kind of walk you through a few things. First of all, there are a couple features up here on this toolbar that you should be aware of. So if you click here, this speech bubble, you can take notes. So these are your notes that you can add about schools, maybe impressions that you have, whatever you like, you can add notes here. On this little sort of index kind of icon right here, you can enter your coursework, and you can also enter your scores. So for the sake of, what I entered an MCAT of 508 and a GPA of 4.0. Okay. And when you enter this information, you can then save your coursework and you can save your data. Okay. You can also enter your coursework for all of the major disciplines in which you would be enrolled as an undergraduate. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of, just for the sake of entering something, let's just say so far I've taken biology and I've taken biochemistry, okay? And then you can save that coursework and those hours, and you will see how that sort of comes into play once we start looking at schools. And then you can also favorite medical schools. So as you are reviewing the different medical schools, searching for different medical schools, you can, star your favorites. Okay. So let's go, back to our homepage and let's search institutions. Okay. So this brings us back to the homepage, and you can see here that every medical school in the United States and in Canada is listed in alphabetical order, okay? Now, on the left-hand side, okay, you can filter, okay? So you can filter schools based on state, okay? So let's say, you want to really go to medical school in California. There you go. Here are all your medical schools in California. Okay. Then you can also filter schools. Hold on. Let's go back here. Then you can also filter schools based on the type of applicants that the school accepts. And these are our four major categories that we are concerned about. So which schools accept out of state or out of province applicants, which schools accept US applicants, which schools accept Canadian applicants, and which schools accept international applicants. Okay, so for example, if we were to click on, which schools accept international applicants, let's click on that, and you'll see that our top school that was here before is no longer listed, right? Because Albany does not accept international applicants. Okay, so this is a great way to kind of filter through, which schools accept which types of applicants. Then if you wanted to filter your medical schools based on the median GPA, you could do that. So let's say my MCAT, rather, my MCAT was a 508, right? So I don't want to apply to any medical schools that accept students where the median MCAT is above, let's say, a 510. Okay, so that's going to really rule out a lot of medical schools for me that I potentially would be competitive for. All right, so you can sort things based on the median MCAT. You can sort things based on a median GPA, and you can sort based on the application deadline. Okay, and they will give you some ideas of what those deadlines should be. And then you can also sort schools based on the combined degree type offered. So if you're applying, for example, to MD, PhD, which medical schools will offer an MD, PhD. Okay. Same thing with BSMD, right? So, if you're a college student looking to apply to BSMD programs, which medical schools offer BSMD programs? All right. So as you can see, there's a lot of really useful information that you can glean from this. Then you can also, select a school based on class size, the school type, public versus private, and the campus type. All right. So there's a lot of different filters that you can apply as you're searching for medical schools. Now we are going to go through what data, what information is listed for every single medical school in the country, and how can you use that information to your advantage. Okay, so let's take a look at, I don't know, let's take a look at Columbia. Okay, so we're going to click on Columbia. Okay, and here you can see please be patient for my computer to load. These are all the major headings of information, and you can click on any of these and it will bring you to that section. Okay, so overview, admissions, acceptance data, education and research, tuition, aid and debt, and campus life. And all of these different sections offer incredible information that will be super duper helpful. So in terms of your overview, you can see right off the bat that Columbia is a fairly competitive medical school with a median MCAT of 522, a median GPA of 3.92. You can see the ratio of men to women. It's private. They will accept out-of-state Canadian internationals. Here's your tuition, really does not vary between in-state and out-of-state. Application deadline, combined degree. Okay. So, and then, then you're going to go over some general information, contact information, things of that nature, what combined programs are available at Columbia, what special programs are available, and then you're going to get to the school's mission. And the school's mission is super important because many medical schools, especially now, are looking to fill their classes with students who have ideals and goals that are aligned with the school's mission. And usually this will come through in your secondary essays, where you will answer specific questions that are crafted by each medical school. And in those secondary essays, you want to make sure that, kind of who you are, what you write about is really aligned with the school's mission. So, this is a great way to kind of have access to a resource where all of the mission statements are listed for every medical school you might be interested in. Okay. Then here you're going to see some deadlines. The earliest date to submit your primary this year is May 27th. Application reviews will begin on July 1st, right? So you can see that, Columbia really, for those students who are able to get their applications in on May 27th and turn around the secondary essays very, very quickly, you can have a super duper early review of your application. Then you will get to letters of recommendation. Now, Columbia has a minimum number of letters that they require is 3. The maximum number is 7. So that's also, really valuable information. Some medical schools will not have such generous limits for the maximum numbers of letters accepted. So that's something that you really need to pay attention to. At MedEdits, we consider the minimum number of letters that you should submit to any medical school to be 4. And 5 or 6 letters if they are all very strong endorsements of your candidacy. That's also something else that we recommend. And then, they will talk about their policies regarding committee letters, letter packets, and then individual letters. And you can hover over these question marks to kind of find out what those different definitions are if you don't know. Then there is secondary application information. Is there a secondary application? What is the fee? What's the URL? When is the secondary application deadline? Now, this is interesting because they say the secondary application can be submitted on July 1st, and meanwhile, review, they said, started on July 1st. So maybe they start reviewing the very day students are allowed to submit secondaries. Some schools will offer this information. So interviews at Columbia begin in mid-August, right? So that's really good to know. And then the interview format. Interestingly, Columbia, it looks like, is having virtual interviews, starting this year. So we have to see if that changes. This information is updated every April. So I would assume that this is accurate for the upcoming cycle, that Columbia will be continuing with, with virtual interviews. Okay. And then here they discuss some COVID policies for 2022. Oldest MCAT considered. This is a really important date for a lot of students, right? If you took your MCAT, more than 2 years ago, are they going to consider it? And Columbia is now, considering MCATs as old as January 2018. So that's really, really generous. Okay, so let's go on to some other very good information. So for Columbia, their acceptance information, the notice of earliest acceptance is March 1st, 2022, right? So Columbia is not a school that has rolling admissions. They release all of their admissions decisions on a single date on March 1st of 2022 this year. Of course, if you end up getting on a wait list, the latest date that you could be notified of an acceptance is July 31st, 2022. Okay. Some schools will offer waitlist information in this section. Many do not. Okay. Now let's go on to selection factors. And this will give you an idea of what Columbia is looking for in their medical school applicants. Just some things that jump out at you. Shadowing is not required, it's recommended. Pre-medical shadowing requirements or recommendations, so you can consider all of that. Then these pre-medical experience graphs, which give you, again, some great data, will tell you what percentage of the entering class has certain types of experiences. So as you will see for Columbia, 98% of the class in 2020 had research experience. So obviously research is essentially a requirement for Columbia pre-medical students. The vast majority had medical or clinical community service volunteer activities. The majority had physician shadowing, and the majority had community service experience. So, so these trends are kind of interesting, right? Because in 2017, only 70% of students had physician shadowing, and now 89% have it. The research really didn't vary that much in these past years. And obviously the definition of physician shadowing is a bit different for COVID. There definitely are some virtual shadowing experiences that have replaced in-person shadowing. Then you will see, if what the requirements are. And as you can see, whatever you enter, here, under your coursework is going to pop up under these courses in each of these profiles to give you a sense of whether or not you have met those requirements. Okay, so biology, I've only taken 4 hours and I need 8 credit hours, so I haven't fulfilled that requirement. Biochem is recommended, right? So that's why there's no check mark here, because we haven't, it's not a required course for Columbia. Okay, now going down to acceptance data, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this because how you sift through this data is important. First of all, you can see that my MCAT score of 508 is way below Columbia's median. It's way below, even their 10th percentile range. So I really have no shot at getting into Columbia. That's okay. Any medical school in the United States is a great medical school, so you don't have to go to Columbia. So if you want to explore the MCAT data for all applicants, you are going to select all applicants. Okay. If you let's say you are an out-of-state student, you'll then scroll down and say, okay, I want to know what the data is only for students who are out of state. You'll click on that and it will adjust the information. If you want to know only for students that matriculated, right? Students who actually enrolled at Columbia, let's see what that data is. It actually dropped by a point. It's 521. Now, let's say you want to test a different MCAT. You're taking the MCAT on June 18th, and you're aiming for a 520. Okay, well, let's say I get a 520. Let's see, let me see how I do with Columbia now, right? So now we're going to go back to search, and there's Columbia, and I'm going to scroll down. Hold on. And I'm going to click on my admissions data. Oh, it didn't update it. That's interesting. Okay, well, a slight flaw in the system. That's okay. Now we can actually look at specific section scores here. And then you are going to see that you have the same grid for your GPA. And again, you can take a look at, what's the average GPA for out-of-state applicants? And you can take a look at this data and obviously sift out this data, based on the category that you fall into for this specific medical school. And you can edit your GPA as well. Let's say you are a junior, you're not going to be applying till the end of your senior year, and you anticipate you're going to have a 4.0 for your entire senior year. You can edit that, to give to get a sense of how competitive you are with your GPA. So now this is a very important table. Okay, so this is the matriculation data for the most recent first year class. Okay, so you can see how many verified applications Columbia received, and they received 7,293. Of those, they interviewed 857. Now, what Columbia will not tell you is they won't tell you what percentage of students they interviewed actually received acceptance offers. But what you can see is how many deferred, how many were accepted to MD, PhD, and what total enrolled. Okay. Now, if you shift over to one of these two columns, so out of state and in state, and this will become more important for state schools rather than for private schools, but you can see how many applications were received for out of state students, what number they interviewed, and what number ended up matriculating from out of state, right? So the majority of Columbia's class is filled with out of state applicants, which is what you would expect from a private medical school. Then you can look at some matriculant demographics. You can find out what percentage of students were science math majors, what number of students entered from the post-baccalaureate programs. And so, for each school, these categories and these categories here are going to be a bit different. Then you can see, based on race and ethnicity, what number of matriculants, matriculated based on race and ethnicity. This is all self-reported, by the way. What percent were disadvantaged, and what were the age ranges of students. And this is interesting, right? Because in 2017, 83 students were between 19 and 23, and in 2020, only 76 students were within that age range. And this sort of reflects the fact that students are taking, at least one gap year. The majority are taking at least one gap year before applying to medical school. Then you can take a look at where are applicants from. Okay, so and you can click on that graph. I'm not going to do it just because I realize it's taking a bit of time to get through all of this information. I don't want to keep you here forever. And which what percentage of students are from medically underserved areas. And then this is really key information. This gives you information about the percentage of students that what percentage of students pursue each major specialty in medicine. So if you look at Columbia, the vast majority of students are going into internal medicine, 25%. Most likely, most of those students going into internal medicine are subspecializing, okay? And then the other really popular specialty at Columbia is psychiatry, right? That comes in, I think, second, right? With 13% of students going into psychiatry. So that's really interesting. So Columbia must have a very strong psychiatry department because they've obviously inspired a lot of future psychiatrists. Then you're going to get down to some information about the school's curriculum, office hours, tutoring. So a whole bunch of information here, their commitment to primary care. So this again is going to give you some ideas about, what sets Columbia apart. And if there is a Why Columbia secondary essay this coming year, that's going to help you to write that essay. It's going to give you some information for that essay. Then we're going to talk about language proficiency, right? So, in terms of additional languages, that students speak, and is that a native language or not? Finally, this is an important, bit of information here, which goes over your clinical and your patient experiences. So something that many students kind of forget when they're starting medical school and when they're writing their applications is that, at least half of your time in medical school is going to be spent in a clinical environment, right? So, your education isn't just taking place in the classroom. So understanding where your major clinical rotations are going to be taking place, what the various clinical settings are. That's really important when deciding where you want to go to medical school. It's also really important when you're writing that why this school essay, because you want to sort of mention that. Then there's going to be some information about research and funding, and finally, cost of attendance. So this number, these out of state and in-state numbers, those are going to differ for state schools, right? But obviously for Columbia, there really isn't much difference for in-state versus out-of-state students. And then these two data points are also interesting. Percentage of students receiving aid, 79% of students receive aid. What is the average graduate indebtedness? And it's about $98,000 for Columbia students. So you want to pay attention to that too, just because that could factor into your decision making when you are choosing medical schools, if you have the luxury of choosing between medical schools. And then you're going to see what campus life is like. And so, this is going to give you some additional information. Now, I just want to go to, let's say a state school, just so you can kind of understand, how to use this data for different schools. So let's just go to the University of Mississippi. Okay. So you go to the University of Mississippi. Okay. And I'm thinking, okay, I could totally get into the University of Mississippi. And why? Because their average MCAT is a 505 and I have a 508. So wow, I am competitive for the University of Mississippi. I can get in there. Okay. But then you scroll down to their acceptance data. Okay. And let's go down a little bit further. And you can see that there was only one out of state verified application. And the matriculants, there were no out-of-state matriculants, okay? So even though my MCAT is better than the average MCAT at the University of Mississippi, I have no shot at the University of Mississippi, okay? Now let's look at, let's say, a California medical school, okay? Everybody wants to go to California. And, even though I, let's say, live in New York, I still think I have a pretty good shot at getting into a California school. So I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to see, okay, well, which California school has an MCAT that's closest to mine, right? And I'm going to try for that one. And then so I click on, oh, Riverside. They have a median MCAT of 508. So I'm going to click on Riverside and I'm just going to see, okay, what are my chances based on my 508? And again, I go to their acceptance data, all right? And I look for all accepted out-of-state students. It's blank, okay. Then I scroll down and I see that there were 1,236 out-of-state verified applications. Only 4 of those were interviewed and only 1 matriculated, okay? So again, my chances of getting into Riverside, even though my MCAT matches up with their MCAT, again, is almost nothing. So when making your school list, you really need to be paying attention to, to those out-of-state numbers, because that is really going to impact your success in this process. So as you can see, the MSAR offers a wealth of data that, really you could just spend all day on the MSAR, just looking at the data. I also really like looking at medical school admissions data. So maybe you don't feel the same way, but you certainly could, you can glean a lot of information, and the MSAR should enable you to make a really smart school list, which is, for many, many students, that is a key to success in the medical school admissions process. So I hope this was a useful video for you, and we wish you the best of luck as you apply to medical school. Please visit us at www.mededits.com. We would be happy to help you on your journey to medical school. So take care and good luck.